Over the last decade, there's been a worrying trend of state and federal governments rolling back the laws granting citizens the right to protest. Agree or disagree with the issues in focus, your ability to protest is vitally important to democracy, and according to the Human Rights Law Centre, governments have been slowly taking that right away in every jurisdiction of Australia. To work out why this is happening and some of the questions posed by last Monday night, I spoke with
Associate Professor Maria O'Sullivan, Deakin Law School.
Have they been rolling back the laws on the right to assembly in this country?
Yeah, I don't know about the last few decades. I've noticed in the last probably 5 years, and that started off with Extinction Rebellion and the climate change issue. And again, to be honest, I think that's largely coming from mining companies having problems with how climate protest is carried out, for example, outside Rio Tinto's offices, etc. And so they have lobbied government. In my opinion, the changes can be brought back to that. So, look, there is, I guess, an argument that we rely on mining for partly, our economy. I think sometimes that's overblown, the importance of that. But there's an argument that commercial interests also have to be balanced with the right to protest. So that comes out, when you've got logging in Tasmania and they've got safe access zones to allow that logging to be done, and then protest has to occur within a certain area. So putting that aside, I would say, over the last 5 or 6 years, I've seen restrictive measures. So that would be increasing sentencing for protest. We can see that with the case of Violet Coco, which was about 2 years ago, when she protested. She's a climate change protester. She protested on Sydney Harbour Bridge. She was improperly charged with obstructing an ambulance. That was later found to be unfounded, but she was sentenced to 15 months imprisonment. So an increase in the sentences, and then I would say greater use of public order offences, so obstructing protest. So the other, restriction is, the greater use of these declarations. So allowing police greater search powers, which has what we call a chilling effect. Chilling effect means that I may not want to protest because I think, okay, I'm going to be searched or I'm going to be subject to police brutality. So there's what the law says and then how it communicates, and it might have, I don't want to protest given, I might be sentenced to 15 months imprisonment.
Why do you think these laws are being used more? These laws are being changed in such a way? Is there a change in political culture? Is there a change in our society?
It's a good question. I guess I think it's international things have occurred. Obviously with Gaza, I think it's the allegations of genocide and the issues of Gaza. And that's interesting because the Prime Minister said this week we need to drop the temperature down, but really, and a lot of people say, we shouldn't be bringing international conflicts to Australia. But people have to understand we are now international and global. We can see what's happening in Gaza on our mobile phones. And we have people here who have links to Gaza, and so they are quite rightly concerned. So there's been conflicts internationally, which mean that people want to protest. And then obviously there are disagreements about how that is viewed. Then with climate change, I think we've had inaction by the Australian government and other governments internationally, and that has meant particularly young people are quite rightly concerned about that. Perhaps we are also being polarised by social media, but I think in terms of the restrictions, the government's trying to, deal with that polarisation.
So, what's your name?
Christine.
Nice to meet you, Christine. What brought you here today?
I've been coming to rallies for 2 years now, almost every week, to protest against the genocide in Gaza.
And what did you think of the extra police powers that were given to the New South Wales Police today?
Well, ridiculous, completely unnecessary, not justified by anything that's gone before. A waste of taxpayers' money.
Have you seen anything like that in the past, at any previous protests that you've attended?
There's always more police at our rallies than are needed, and they look bored, nothing happens. They're peaceful, they're legal, nothing ever happens. So I don't know why taxpayers' money is being wasted.
What do you think are some reforms that should be implemented into the Australian system on a state and federal level that would benefit the people in their ability to assemble and protest?
I would probably say on a sort of big picture level, Commonwealth Bill of Rights or Charter, whatever you'd like to, Human Rights Act, and then in New South Wales and the other jurisdictions. There's a push, for example, to have a Bill of Rights or Charter in New South Wales and in South Australia. So that would be an important thing that, you know, would aid culture of police and government departments. So a Bill of Rights or Charter. And then secondly, a rethink of the balancing between, say, commercial rights, mining rights and the right to protest. And that would mean a rethink of the permit system, say, in New South Wales. And then I think possibly, I guess, education about the importance of protest to democracy, that it's healthy to have protest, and that also, because of our globalised world, people are going to be protesting about international matters like Gaza. And it doesn't mean we're bringing the conflict to Australia, as some people argue. It's just a way of expressing concern about those international matters.
Like, I'm not from Melbourne, but most of my family's from here, and I know you're a Victorian yourself. And as you said before, a lot of people make this argument, the international conflict shouldn't be brought here. But in many ways, especially in Melbourne, it's already here. There's quite a lot of tension in the suburbs, you know, around Jewish suburbs, and the attacks on synagogues and attacks on mosques and vice versa. I mean, has that tension, what sort of laws do you think could ease that tension in a human rights perspective as a lawyer yourself?
It's a wonderful question, because obviously we don't want to have violence. I would probably say there needs to be a demarcation between protests, which I've observed many of the pro-Palestinian protests, and there's a lot of children and families and things. So, and then of course we had, as you say, very concerning, disturbing attacks on, say, a synagogue and mosques and so forth. I probably wanted just to differentiate that, because I think there's bad actors who are doing that. And I know there's an argument that I don't personally agree with, but that the Bondi massacre was sort of aided or, I don't know, contributed to by the protests, say the protests on the Harbour Bridge. I don't think that's the case. I think those lone actors were going to do that anyway. I certainly do not think there's any evidence to say the Bondi, the pair of Bondi massacres were in any way associated or even attended those protests. So that's the first thing. But I do take the point that language is important. So if you're using inflammatory language in public discourse, it does affect the way people are dealt with and viewed. But I would say if we're looking at things like hate speech laws, I would look at Parliament House and the way people carry on there, and the words that are used in Parliament House. So I think it's all very, it's good that we have hate speech laws and we communicate through education in schools and things in terms of Islamophobia and anti-Semitism. I think that's really good to have education in schools about that. But also I have to point to the media. Maybe we need to have more reform of social media, but also our politicians and the way they speak about matters. You know, going back to an unrelated issue, it's not related to Islamophobia or anti-Semitism, but a number of years ago there was footage of Tony Abbott, who was I think he was the Prime Minister, no, he may not have been the Prime Minister then, but Tony Abbott was pictured with a sign saying "Ditch the bitch," and it was about Julie Gillard. Perhaps in that instance he was the leader of the opposition, she was the Prime Minister, but you know, I could give you examples after examples, Barnaby Joyce's language, you know, One Nation, of where really politicians also need to take the lead in the language they use and to be careful about stoking division in Australia.
Right.
Needs to begin at the top.
Lead by example.
Yes.